Rink wide Vancouver. Pre-game, post-game, every game presented by Bodog. From sports odds to free casino games, make a play at bodog.net. Wadden and JPat here with you once again with another edition of the pre-game show as the two worst defensive teams in the NHL collide tonight at Rogers Arena. You like goals, JPat? Remember the last time back in November when these two met? A lot of goals in that game.
I do indeed. 8-5, a Canucks final. The funny part about that night was it was 3-2 after two periods. It was kind of a sleepy hockey game, and then they exploded for 8 goals in the third period. So we've seen some high-scoring games involving the Canucks this year. I think of the 7-6 game against the Montreal Canadiens, 6-5 against the Seattle Kraken, but this one right up there, 13 goals total, and given that there really aren't stakes at play here, this one could be another loose hockey game tonight.
Let's get to the lineup change. It's presented by Delaney's OK Tire out there on Fraser Highway in Langley. Thatcher Demko perhaps going to get the starting goal for the Canucks. And if so, then maybe the goals won't be aplenty like they were the last time.
I suppose so. And it was Spencer Martin was in goal the last time the Canucks faced the Ducks, and actually John Gibson was in goal for Anaheim. So we may have two different guys between the pipes in this hockey game tonight. But yeah, Thatcher Demko had the night off the other night. Looks like he returns. Southern California guy. You know, in his career, he's barely faced the Ducks just 3 times and has just 1 victory against them lifetime. So he'll want to even his record at 2-2 with a victory here tonight. And it looks like it's going to be the same 18 skaters in front of him. So no lineup changes. Jack Studnicka remains the lone healthy scratch for the Vancouver Canucks. Some suggestion that Ethan Bear is getting closer, maybe a possibility for Saturday against Ottawa, but they're going to go with the 6 defensemen that they've been using here for the last couple of games. And that includes those 3 American Hockey League call-ups that, for the most part, are holding their own and doing a pretty decent job.
Rick Tocchet's team hopefully will be rested for this one. He thought they looked tired against Nashville on Monday. However, they still pulled out a W.
Yeah, and he liked that part about it, that even though they didn't have their best stuff, that they still found a way to grind out a victory. It took a shootout, but they did get the job done. And you can understand why the team would be a little bit tired. 3 games in 5 nights. There was the emotion of the trade deadline for some of the guys, seeing a teammate like Curtis Lazar move on, but also the players that thought maybe they'd be packing their bags as well. Sunday was a season ticket holder event, so understandable that Rick Tocchet gave his team the full day off yesterday after the win over Nashville, and I'm sure the coach is hoping that helps them recharge their batteries and they're ready to go against the Ducks tonight.
Canucks top line hopes to feast on the Ducks tonight. Of course, they allow the most goals in the NHL, do Anaheim.
Yeah, most permissive team in the National Hockey League. And you think back to that game on November the 3rd, Elias Pettersson had his first 5-point night. He had a goal and 4 helpers. Andrei Kuzmenko with his first National Hockey League hat trick. So the celebrations were out in full force, part of that big third period. Kuzmenko also had an assist. Interesting when you go back, though, those were goals 4, 5, and 6 on the season. So we really didn't know what we were seeing with Andrei Kuzmenko, but that was kind of the launching point for a guy that now is sitting on 29 for the season and maybe goal number 30 tonight.
His numbers aren't very flattering this year. In fact, it hasn't been very flattering for John Gibson over the last few years. However, still one of the best goalies in the NHL, or can be one of the best goalies in the NHL. Canucks catching a break tonight, not having to face Gibson.
And that's the way we think it's going to unfold here. The Ducks played in Seattle last night, so this is back-to-back for them. Lucas Dostal is their backup last night, and when you think, okay, a guy that doesn't have a lot of NHL experience, he stopped 46 shots in a win in Edmonton earlier this year, so he has been under siege and been up to the challenge, but John Gibson's been playing really well for the Ducks of late. He's been busy and has been pretty good since the All-Star break, but I do think this is 3-4. This is the middle game of 3-4 for them, so I would anticipate that Gibson will watch, and Lucas Dostal will be the goaltender of note for the Anaheim Ducks tonight.
It seems like he has been here forever, but Guillaume Brisebois is going to be here for at least 2 more years. Got himself an extension yesterday.
Well, he's under contract for 2 more years. He could be dealt, I suppose, but I don't imagine there's a massive market for Guillaume Brisebois, who is the definition of depth. But look, this guy's trying to carve out games in the National Hockey League. This will be his 10th game of the season for the Vancouver Canucks, his 7th on this call-up. And yeah, I know there was the blunder late in the game against Nashville where he turned the puck over and it led to the third Predators goal. But for the most part, he's been pretty solid. He's become part of the Canucks penalty kill that has been making incremental strides here of late. And just the sort of portrait of perseverance for a guy that wants to be a professional hockey player, wants to be in the NHL, obviously, but seems pretty comfortable in the Canucks system in the American Hockey League as well. So rewarded with a 2-year contract, a little bit of security, and that second year, a one-way deal. So he's going to be making National Hockey League money regardless of where he plays. You do have to tip your cap to a guy that's just kind of kept his head down and gone about his business.
Let's take a look at the Ducks now, who have been pretty good as of recent.
I know. Even I heard that and I had to process it. But you know what? Before they lost in Seattle last night and they fell 5-2 to the Kraken, they were 4-0-1 in their previous 5 games. They are done. They're dusted. They have nothing to play for. And yet somehow they were finding a way to win hockey games and pick up points. A lot of it on the back of John Gibson, as we talked about. And he has been terrific for them of late. But yeah, that's a little bit of a surprise to see an Anaheim team this late in the season getting on a little bit of a run. So, you look at the standings and they are way down there and you think this is going to be easy for the Canucks. It looked like it was pretty easy for the Seattle Kraken last night. But, recently at the very least, the Ducks have been able to manage some resistance against opponents. So nothing comes easy to the Vancouver Canucks. They certainly shouldn't be thinking that this one's going to be easy, but it is back-to-back for the Ducks. So we'll see how much energy they've got when the puck drops just after 7 o'clock tonight.
And the reality is they have the worst defensive team and are the second worst offensive team in the league.
That is not a flattering 1-2 platter combo or combo platter. Just way too much giving up goals in their own zone and not a whole lot happening for them offensively. Trevor Zegras is their star and one of the young faces of the National Hockey League, a guy that was drafted in Vancouver back in 2019. In fact, 1 pick before Vasily Podkolzin. I don't know if you saw the highlight last night, but it truly was a highlight reel goal between the legs in Seattle. So this guy can be a highlight reel. He's their only 20-goal scorer. That was his 21st goal of the season. Troy Terry's had a decent year. Not that long ago, he had scored in 4 in a row. So he can, certainly provide offense for the Ducks, but there just isn't a whole lot beyond those two. Mason McTavish, youngster, will probably be one of the finalists for Rookie of the Year, and certainly they have high hopes for him in the future, but asking an awful lot of a first-year player to, try to carry the load offensively for this hockey club. So this is a bare bones roster. It is. After the trade deadline, this team was busy peddling pieces away, and it really is about next year and beyond for the Anaheim Ducks. Problem is, they do have to field an NHL roster for their remaining games. And so, every night out, a challenge for the Ducks, just given where they are in the standings.
Let's get to the stat that stands out. It's presented by Jason Hominick at jason.mortgage.
Well, I mentioned the fact that the Ducks played in Seattle last night. I just was fascinated by this when I saw it this morning. The Ducks will be the first team all year, game number 64 for the Vancouver Canucks, and they'll be the first opponent that played in Seattle last night and is making it a back-to-back at Rogers Arena. You thought when Seattle came into the league that there would be a lot of that, probably cutting both ways, and that maybe both teams would benefit from finding tired teams coming through their buildings, but it just hasn't been that case. Seattle's had 8 opponents play in Vancouver and then go down to Seattle the next night, but it really hasn't been a two-way street. Although I will say this, that starting with the Ducks, 4 of the final 8 teams that'll visit Vancouver this season will stop off in Seattle. So it's back-end loaded in that way, but the Ducks become the first team all season long to go back-to-back in Seattle and then Vancouver. That's the stat that stands out to me, brought to you by Jason Hominick at jason.mortgage.
Let's get to my Bodog Best Bet, and I'm looking at 2 really poor defensive teams, the 32nd and 31st, respectively. So I think there's going to be goals in the first period. I have both teams to score in the first at plus 130. Hey, we saw these guys can put a lot of goals on the board when they face one another. I don't know if it'll be like that tonight, but I do see both teams getting on the score sheet after 20 minutes.
Yeah, I do get the sense, even with Demko back in there, there's probably going to be some goals both ways in this hockey game, and we'll see if it happens in the early going. You look at the Ducks, and we talked about the fact that they're the worst team in the NHL defensively, and then at the deadline, they went and traded John Klingberg, who wasn't having a great season, but still a National Hockey League defender, and Dmitry Kulikov as well. So this team that can't keep pucks out of its own net, and then it goes and peels off 2 of its top 6 defenders, and that just, again, gives you an idea of sort of the direction that the Ducks are headed. In the short term, again, they've got prospects for days. They like the future of the hockey club, but in the here and now, looks like they are very much going to be in the running for Connor Bedard before all is said and done.
A lot of guys could be in the running for this tonight. Who is going to do something in this game?
Well, he scored last game, and that was terrific, but it was his first goal in 13 games. And I'm talking about Dakota Joshua, big winger for the Vancouver Canucks. Tocchet likes the board work and those board battles that Dakota Joshua has been winning. And it wasn't just the goal, although the goal was nice in the third period the other night. Looked like it gave the Canucks a cushion, and obviously Nashville was able to chip away and come back and send it to overtime and then the shootout. But Dakota Joshua with his 9th goal of the season. Beyond that, though, he had 4 shots on goal and 7 hits in the hockey game. Pretty complete night. And I think that's what the Canucks want out of Dakota Joshua. So he did it the other night. Can he do it again? You'd like to see him build some consistency into his game. So I can't just do it once and then go into hiding for a while. I'm looking at Dakota Joshua. The Ducks can be a physical hockey team. They've got some size and some guys that like to bang and crash. Will Dakota Joshua be an answer to that for the Vancouver Canucks? We'll find out, but he's the guy I'm looking at to do something in this hockey game tonight.
Well, let's see if the Canucks can follow up a win with yet another one as they try to go duck hunting tonight at Rogers Arena. This has been another edition of the Rink Wide Vancouver podcast presented by Bodog. For Jeff Patterson, I'm Andrew Wadden. Remember, Rink Wide is the show that always scores.